this is a very, very interesting story. I've never really talked about the white helmets before for multiple reasons. One, I didn't know as much, and I don't know as much. I'm not in Syria. I only know based what I read. But this is now a mainstream article. It's all over the news, the New York Times, the Guardian, BBC. Everyone's talking about it because the white helmets are being evacuated from Syria. And they're basically running away from Syria because the Syrian government is finally taking its country back from extremist terrorists such as ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra, and multiple terrorist organizations that infiltrated their country. That was a secular government by someone who was elected in elections. So, you know, I mean, I don't know if, actually, I'll take that back. I don't know if Bashar al-Assad was elected in elections, but it was a secular government. So anyway, it's not our country. It's definitely not ISIS and Al-Qaeda's country, and it's certainly not a rebels' country. So anyway, the white helmets have to leave because there's no more room for them to stay, because Syria is taking back their country from the terrorist groups that I talked about and the rebels. President Trump has said many times, as well as Tulsi Gabbard, a Democrat politician from Hawaii, many others, who are these rebels? They keep saying on the news and the white helmets, the rebels are such great people. The rebels are trying to free the Syrian people. But if you talk to Syrian people and actual people in Syria, they say, no, the rebels are not helping us and the white helmets are not helping us. The Syrian people, as well as Russia, who is helping Syria, said that the white helmets and the rebels were terrorists themselves, and they were terrorizing the community. So this is a quote from President Bashar al-Assad of Syria. He said that the white helmets are humanitarian masks and umbrellas just to implement a certain agenda. And who are the white helmets? They are a organization that is supposed to be a humanitarian aid organization, and they're funded by foreign governments, mostly by foreign governments, and also they take public donations as well. Who helped them get out of Syria? How come they evacuated? Who helped them get out? It was US, Canada, Britain, Israel, and possibly Germany as well, because some of the people are going to Germany. Most of them, they evacuated out of Syria through, I believe, Israel, and then they're basically keeping the white helmets mostly in Jordan, although there are reports, like I said, of them going to Germany as well as the UK. I also heard reports, someone was saying, oh, I don't know if any of the white helmets can go take refugee in America because of Trump's travel ban. Well, guess what? Just to be honest, I'm not really mad at that. I don't want the white helmets here, to be honest, until I figure out who they really are, because many reports, and there's many video footage of them staging events and, you know, basically just getting it, like you say when a girl takes a picture in front of like a nice restaurant, you say she's getting it for the gram, you know, she's just taking the picture for the Instagram. Same thing with the white helmets. It's like, are they really helping people, or are they just getting the picture from the gram? The Syrian government, the Russian government, as well as many American citizens, to be honest, have accused the white helmets of staging chemical attacks. One American news network went to Syria, came up with these conclusions. Many other American news sources feel that way. You know, Tucker Carlson from Fox News has questioned whether they were authentic or not. So the white helmets are very, very controversial and very, very polarizing. Half of the people think they're humanitarians who are doing this great work, and half of the people think they're terrorists who are literally trying to overtake Syria. And if you ask me what side I'm on, I'm not convinced that they're humanitarians there to help. Why do I say this? Well, let's look at the evidence. First of all, I do want to say as well, before I say that, is that President Assad basically said that it was criminal that they were taking the white helmets out, that the Western world was helping white helmets get out, because I guess he wanted the white helmets to stay, and he wanted to hold them accountable for the crimes that they've committed in his country. And why do I think that the white helmets were not who Western media says they were? Western media says they're there to help, they're such heroes, and, you know, they're saving the day. Well, they only operate in rebel-held areas. So you won't find white helmets with the Syrian government. You won't find white helmets in, you know, places that are owned by the Syrian government, taken over from terrorist groups or rebel groups. The only place that you ever find white helmets are in rebel-held areas. And this I'm getting from a media report. This is a mainstream media report. I'm not making this up. They're only in rebel-held areas. And who are the rebels? I mean, the rebels are not the Syrian government. The rebels are a regime change, group. You could call them terrorists, you can call them rebels, you can call them heroes, whatever you want to call them. The rebels were trying to overtake the secular government of Syria and, basically kill the leader, similar to what people did in Libya and Iraq, and install their own government. So how is that legal? How is that fair? How is that productive? How is that helpful? It didn't really work well in Iraq. It didn't work at all in Iraq. It didn't work well at all in Libya. It backfired tremendously in Libya. It backfired so hard in Libya, even all of the media reports that said, oh, yes, take over Libya, they've now admitted years later that it was a complete failure. So everyone knows that Libya was a failure. Everybody knows that Iraq was a failure. They were trying to do the same thing in Syria, but Syria fought back, got some help from Russia, got some help from Iran, and to be honest, got some help from President Trump. President Trump overturned $1 billion CIA program that was basically a secretive program to fund these rebels and fund these white helmets, because the white helmets are only in rebel areas. President Trump overturned that, and that's something that a lot of progressive, left-leaning people who claim to hate President Trump and love Syria so much, they don't want to admit that because they're not honest. They hate Trump so much that they're like, oh no, he didn't do anything. He shot missiles into Syria. He's shooting missiles. He didn't help Syria. No, that's a complete lie. Ask anybody in Syria. They might not know. But President Trump overturned $1 billion program. Of course, that's going to have a huge effect. I mean, it's just obvious, but there's some people that choose politics and socialism over common sense, logic, and literally reality, the reality of the situation. So overall, Syria is a very complex situation. Iran is there. Israel's kind of involved a little bit. United States is involved. Britain's involved. It's like a proxy war. You have Russia is involved. There's reports of oils and gas lines. So, of course, it's probably over money and control and also safety and security, because you have countries like Iran that are now coming into Syria, and Iran doesn't like Israel and doesn't even want Israel to exist. And then you have Israel, coming in and taking in part, United States and Britain. It's a huge mess. But overall, I do want to say the white helmets were evacuated from Syria, and the Syrian government is not happy because they were like, you know what? They think the white helmets are terrorists, and they wanted to hold them accountable. Overall, I'm glad they're not coming to the United States because I don't trust them. I've seen videos of them literally laying there. This is real. You have white helmets. They're like, there's someone laying on the ground frozen, and they're held there. And then it's like they turn the cameras on, and then the guy starts screaming, going, ah, ah. He starts screaming, and they start picking him up. It's all over YouTube. So it's like, what, were you staging that? What was that? And then the white helmets apparently put out an official release, and you could check me on this as well, because I'm just going from memory right now. This is months ago I read this, or years ago. The white helmets issued an apology statement and said, oh, no, we weren't staging an event there. We were doing the mannequin challenge, which was like when you froze and they play music, and that it was a big thing in the Western world and probably in other countries too. It was like an Instagram, you freeze, play the music, and then everybody just stays frozen. They said that they were doing the mannequin challenge, and they were like, I'm sorry if that was distasteful. You're doing the mannequin challenge on the front lines? I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of sketchy stuff, but anyway, congratulations to Syria for taking their country back from terrorists and rebels who are trying to overthrow your country and turn it into Libya. I think that's great, and the white helmets only were in rebel areas. So why? My questions before I move on to the next were, during the Obama administration, the United States has the biggest military in the world. We have a massive Air Force. We have a massive Navy. We have 10 times, 5 times, 6 times, 20, 30, 40, 50 times the military that most countries have, 100 times, 200 times. We're the United States. We have a bigger military budget than the next 4, 5, 6, 7 countries. I don't even know the math, but anyway, United States military, everyone else's military. Now, United States' military, Al-Qaeda and ISIS is like 20 times lower than any country. They didn't even have an air force. There's pictures of them, they're taking people's heads and chopping people's heads off. So you're telling me that the United States, and I'm not saying this is true because it could, there could be other reasons, and maybe it's harder than I'm saying, but we have a massive military, and during the Obama administration, these terror organizations were taking over entire cities. They were taking over Damascus. They were taking over Aleppo. They took over, Mosul and Iraq. They were basically running the cities. This is why President Trump wants a travel ban, because you have terrorist organizations who are taking over entire regions and countries. I mean, who knows what if the passport agency is even legit or not. So if you're taking over an entire city, so I mean, the travel ban is just basic common sense, but everyone thinks it's like terrible, like, oh no, just, let a bunch of terrorists come to your country, it's okay. But anyway, so they took over a bunch of regions. President Trump gets into office, and then they have the huge refugee crisis where they're like, oh no, we have all these refugees, we need to help them. Here, send them to Britain, and send them to Sweden, and send them to Germany, and send them to the United States, send them to Canada. Meanwhile, if you don't start the war, and you don't try to kill the leader of Syria and someone called in, if you don't start a war and you don't try to kill the leaders of Syria, Iraq, and Libya, then there's not going to be a huge refugee crisis. So during the Trump administration, hundreds of thousands of refugees went back to Syria. Hundreds of refugees went back this week from Lebanon. So, wow, spoiler alert, if you stop trying to overthrow the secular government of these countries, or whatever government of these countries, there's no refugee crisis to begin with. Wow, who would have thought? No war means no refugee crisis. Yeah, so there doesn't need to be a bunch of refugees. You don't need to flood the entire world with refugees because you're the ones creating them. But anyway, overall, they took their country back now from these rebels and from these terrorist organizations, and it just seems strikingly weird to me that these organizations were running rampant all over the world for the last 8 years. Trump campaigns on, I'm going to defeat these terrorist organizations, and literally within a year and a half, these terrorist organizations are completely eradicated in Syria. Am I supposed to be surprised by that, or am I supposed to be skeptical and say, maybe the Obama administration wasn't what they told us it was? Maybe our foreign policy under the Bush and Obama years wasn't really spot on. Maybe, the news organizations were lying to us. And most importantly, maybe they weren't telling the truth about the white helmets and the rebels, because all the proof and all the evidence outside of the hysteria and Trump hatred and all this bipartisan hackery from the, Republicans and Democrats alike who are old, stuck in their ways, all the evidence shows that the rebels and the white helmets were not really helping, but they were actually there to overthrow the government, which time and time again has literally never worked. So why in the world, just because you scream at me and make fun of me and say, oh, you're a terrible person if you don't agree with me, why in the world would I think it was supposed to work in Syria? It wasn't going to work. Luckily, it didn't work out, and I hope that the Syrian citizens enjoy their life in Syria instead of scattered all over Europe, mixed in with hundreds of thousands of people from other countries that weren't refugees, that literally just used that as an excuse and a situation where they could get into Western countries and flood the world, accordingly. And this is not my theory. You have literally, like I said earlier, the leader of Turkey threatening the Western civilization, saying, hey, if you guys don't watch it, I'm going to open the floodgates and flood your countries with refugees. There's nothing racist, sexist, or xenophobic about it. There's millions of people who want to, destroy certain countries, just like there's always been wars and, national conflicts, whatever, or global conflicts. So, I mean, this is just a really wild situation. And overall, the white helmets should be under scrutiny a little bit now that they're completely eradicated and kicked out of Syria, or evacuated by United States, Britain, Germany, UK, and multiple other countries who were backing them not only financially, not only press-wise, but also politically.